So if you're a regular viewer of my videos, it is highly likely that you are a chronically online girl and or gay, which I love. But with this new video series that I have going on, I wonder if that demographic is now expanding to include some employed boyfriends that are confused but eager to learn, which I would also love because that would be hilarious. So this is for you, my confused employed pookies. You may have heard the phrase, "the summer I turned pretty," thrown around by your friends or by many at TikTok. What is that, you may ask? The Summer I Turned Pretty is originally a series written by Jenny Han consisting of 3 books. The Summer I Turned Pretty, It's Not Summer Without You, and We'll Always Have Summer, published in 2009, 2010, and 2011, respectively. After the success of the movie To All the Boys I've Loved Before that was released on Netflix starring Lana Condor and Noah Centineo in 2018, which was also based on a Jenny Han book series, it matters not what you've done, but what you do with what you've done for others. I guess Amazon Prime hit Jenny up and was like, hey, what if we made a TV show? What would happen if we just called Taylor up? The first season of The Summer I Turned Pretty was released in 2022, the second in 2023, and now we're getting the final season, the 3rd season, in the year 2025. The series finale will air on September 17th, 2025. That is why there's so much hubbub currently, because we're getting new episodes of this final season at 3 a.m. Eastern, 12 Pacific every Wednesday. The episodes are usually 40 minutes long to an hour, and season 1 had 7 episodes, season 2 had 8 episodes, and season 3 will have a whopping 11 episodes. After watching this video, I want you to be able to go onto TikTok and understand every single video that's thrown your way. No more FOMO, no more pretending to understand something that you don't. But in order for that to happen, you need to understand not only the plot of the show, but the internet's reaction to the show, the memes, the dynamics of the cast outside of the show. With that being said, let's get into the plot first, because at the end of the day, that's what it is all fucking about. It's important to note there are some major differences between the book plot and the show plot. If you want some extra homework, I actually already have a video explaining the differences between the book plot and the show plot. Would you look at that? So you could check that out if you're really curious. But honestly, I think the majority of the people that are talking about this show, either, in real life or on TikTok, probably haven't read the books or haven't read the books recently. So you can pretty much just get by with knowing that they're a little bit different. So basically, there's this girl named Isabel. She's the main character, but she goes by the nickname Belly. That's probably going to take some getting used to, but it'll stop sounding weird the more you hear it, I promise. Belly's family consists of her older brother Steven and her parents Laurel and John, who are divorced, so that's the Conklin family. Then we have the Fisher family, which consists of Susanna, Adam, and their 2 sons, Conrad and Jeremiah. These 2 families come together and hang out at this place called Cousins Beach for the entire summer every year because Susanna and Laurel are besties, some would argue platonic soulmates. Let me give you a rundown of each of the characters. So we've got John. He's pretty cool and chill and normal, not really all that involved. I'm pretty sure he's a history teacher or something. Then we have Laurel. She's an author, a bit uptight, but she slays. Then we have Susanna. She's very carefree and fun. She and Laurel have a very deep bond, like I mentioned. I think she's a housewife. And then we have her husband, Adam, typical finance bro, douchey, but also very rich. He is, in fact, the reason that there is a beach house in Cousins for the 2 families to stay at. And also on that point, there's a little bit of tension there because the Fisher family is very rich, the Conklin family is not. During the summer, except for the 4th of July, it's pretty much only the mothers and the children at the beach house, so it's particularly meaningful to them, you know what I mean? It's their little, safe haven, magical fucking place. So in terms of the kids' ages, I think it's just easier to look at it in school year terms. We've got Conrad, who's the oldest, Stephen and Jeremiah are a year younger, and then Belly is a year younger than them. Belly is the baby of the family and the only girl in the group. As such, she's picked on and left out at times, but they're also very protective of her. That's the dynamic that they've got going on. Then we have Jeremiah. He's known for being fun and flirty and also cringy. Then we have Steven, very cocky, very smart, but also lovable. He's definitely a fan favorite. Finally, we have Conrad. When we first meet him, he's the angsty, broody type who suffers in silence, one of those guys. But, he's also very smart, very responsible, arguably considerate, doing the whole med school thing, future doctor on our hands. And actually, speaking of doctors, I have a little story time. In my junior year of college, there were multiple points where I found something unusual with my body. Maybe it was a bump on my foot or an unusually large mosquito bite. And when I say large, y'all, it was massive. Next thing you know, it's 2 a.m. and I've been doom scrolling for the past 2 hours trying to figure out if these things are a sign that I'm dying and in need of immediate medical attention. Spiraling like this sucks. It's scary, it's stressful, and at the end of the day, it was totally unnecessary when I could have just booked a doctor that was the right fit for me, someone in network, and with availability in the next day or two. This is why ZocDoc, the sponsor of today's video, is so helpful. ZocDoc is a free website where you can easily search and compare high-quality in-network doctors so you can find the right doctor for you. Whether you're looking for someone nearby or with specific appointment times, ZocDoc helps you quickly find the right doctor for your needs. No guesswork, no super long phone calls where they put you on hold for forever. You can instantly book a visit with a few clicks and typically find an appointment within just 24 to 72 hours of booking, or even that same day. Plus, with tons of verified patient reviews and detailed doctor profiles, you can get a real sense of the provider and their practice before you even step into the office, which is really nice. And ZocDoc isn't just for general practitioners. They have more than 100,000 providers across nearly every specialty, from mental health to dental health, eye care to skincare, and much more. It's the one-stop shop for all your healthcare needs, and the best part, it's completely free. Plus, ZocDoc helps you get appointments fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking, and you can even score same-day appointments. No need to call doctor's offices and wait on hold either. ZocDoc lets you do everything online so you can quickly make an appointment. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/ToddHunter, also linked in the description, to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. Thank you so much to ZocDoc for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. So all of the children have literally known each other for forever. They're practically family, that is, until they start getting down and dirty with each other. The pivotal summer was when Belly got conventionally attractive, hence the show's name. Once she got to the beach house and both brothers saw her, a love triangle commenced. I'm going to talk about seasons 1 and 2 very broadly, and then go more in depth on season 3, because I'll be honest, that's where all the tea is at. Shit goes down in season 3. So season 1 is about Belly experiencing summer, something that's supposed to be so familiar and routine, in a different light because of her glow up. The glow up was life-changing, evidently. She's hanging out with boys, she's getting into drama. The overarching plot point of the season is that there's this deb ball that all the girls and cousins partake in. Deb balls are a bit of an old-fashioned tradition to introduce girls into society, but Belly decides she wants to partake because new year, new her, I guess. Now let's talk romance and relationships during season 1. Laurel and John have recently divorced. John ends up visiting as per usual for the 4th of July, and he brings this younger girl that he was dating, but that literally only lasts like one episode because the running theme with him is that he's in love with Laurel. He's been in love with Laurel. The divorce was not his idea. Laurel, on the other hand, is single and ready to mingle. She's exploring her options, one of which is this guy named Cleveland, who's a fellow author and a little bit of a mentor figure to Conrad this season. He's cool, but not endgame, despite him making a brief reappearance in season 2. Steven starts seeing this girl named Shayla. My Shayla! Shayla is this sophisticated fashionista queen who slays so hard all the time, constantly. They have a cute relationship until Taylor enters the mix. Taylor is Belly's longtime best friend. At first, she's not a super likable character because she seems to only care about talking to boys, partying. She gets kind of jealous and possessive over Belly by being mean to Belly's new friends, and she made out with Steven on Belly's birthday, despite knowing that he was with Shayla. So, messy. Of course, Steven is in the wrong for that too, even more so, and he admitted to doing that because he was insecure about not being good enough for Shayla. And I guess his solution for that was to become even worse. Anyway, Belly and Taylor ended up making up, and as the seasons go on, we see Taylor mature a bit, and she also ends up being a fan favorite for being unapologetically herself, not taking shit from people, and being loyal and a good friend to Belly when she starts acting fucking stupid. And Steven ultimately ends up making up with Shayla, and they end up together at the end of season 1. Steven was her escort to the deb ball. Now let's talk about Belly. So Belly's main thing going on is that she has been unconditionally and irrevocably in love with Conrad as soon as she gained consciousness. Matter of fact, that was probably and unironically her first conscious thought. And so naturally, now that she's pretty, she was all like, hey, maybe Conrad will notice me now. But even though he notices her immediately and his perception of her this particular summer changes immediately the second he sees her, he doesn't act on it and is actually actively in a romantic thing with this girl named Nicole. That's when fan favorite Cam Cameron enters the mix. I love Cam Cameron. Everyone loves Cam Cameron. He is this sweet, nerdy guy who approaches Belly at this beach bonfire thing after recognizing her from, I think, a Latin camp they happened to go on together or something, but Anyways, that's besides the point. He starts pursuing her, taking her on a date to this drive-in movie, takes her on a picnic. He loves whales. He literally treated her so well. I cannot stress that to you enough. He was attentive, he was understanding. There is a universal agreement that Cam Cameron is the best, okay? He was really only relevant during season 1, although he did make a reappearance in season 2, which was kind of pointless, but I don't think anyone was complaining. He, in fact, elevated my viewing experience dramatically. The entire time Belly was with Cam Cameron, she was pining after Conrad. Jeremiah was also flirting with her. Here's the thing. So in terms of Belly and Conrad, so like I said, immediately this summer, there was like an immediate spark between them. Belly's always had this thing for him, and Conrad is just now seeing her in a new light. However, here's the thing with them though. Because Conrad is already with Nicole, Belly is with Cam Cameron, neither of them are really truly acting on it until the 4th of July, when Conrad and Belly have a romantic moment, which was interrupted when Jeremiah shot a firework in their general direction. Now, did he aim it at them or aim it towards them? Who's to say? But anyways, no one got hurt, and that's what matters. As a result, the next day, Belly ends things with Cam Cameron and tries to get things going with Conrad, but he shuts her down in a pretty mean way. And so in her mind, she's like, okay, you know, I'm not being delusional. I think something can really happen between us. I think he feels the same way, and he does, but then he gaslights her and is mean to her, and he's like, well, you shouldn't have broke up with Cam Cameron because, you know, I don't want to be with you, which was crazy and mean, and, you know, I'm not going to let you Conrad girlies forget that. Anyways, then Jeremiah, because Conrad shut her down, right? Jeremiah is seeing this, you know, he's inferring, he's connecting the dots, he's seeing what's going on, and so he decides to pounce and make his move. And he does this by confessing his feelings to her in the pool, and he says this whole thing, and actually, he says that he even liked her before the summer she turned pretty, mind you. And then he asks her if she could ever feel the same way about him, and she says yes, and then kisses him. Okay? So immediately, like, this was literally, I believe, either that same day or the next day. So she goes from wanting to be with Conrad to saying yes to Jeremiah's confession and kissing him in the fucking pool at night, right? So already, whoa. Whoa, okay? Whoa. And, you know, this is problematic for a number of reasons. One, they're brothers, all right? This is fucked up. You're family friends. You're toying with brothers here. Like, this cannot end well, and it doesn't. Spoiler alert. The other thing is that Conrad is not evicted from Belly's mind or heart. Like, she is still thinking about this man, but she still decides to start getting closer with Jeremiah. They're kind of sort of dating now, but they're keeping it a secret from everybody because, you know, she doesn't want to make waves or anything, but she does end up asking him to be her escort to the Deb ball, and he says yes, of course, even though he's traditionally against Deb balls, but he's like, hey, I'll make an exception for my girl. Did they in fact go to second base in his car? Yes, but that's also besides the point. So now we're at the end of the season and the Deb ball is happening. Jeremiah is escorting her, but when it comes time for the big dance, which, you know, they had this whole little routine thing, all the girls are supposed to dance with their escorts and whatever, Jeremiah is mysteriously missing. And so Conrad steps up, and it was this really magical moment for Belly. She's like, wow, my knight in shining armor, my prince charming, we're dancing, we're having a blast. Meanwhile, Jeremiah is crashing out and crying. But it's not because Conrad is actively stealing his girl, it is actually because he ended up finding out on accident that Susanna's cancer, his mom, Susanna's cancer, has returned. So lots of things are revealed this night. Turns out, so Susanna, her cancer returned. She told Laurel about it, but she wanted to keep it a secret just between the two of them because she didn't want to do chemotherapy. She wanted to be herself when she died, but she also wanted to have like one last perfect summer with everybody. She didn't want to burden the kids with this information. She wanted them to be in blissful ignorance, but it turns out that Conrad knew about the cancer returning. I forget how he found out, but he has known all of this time, and that's the reason why he's been so angsty this whole entire summer. But he was keeping it a secret from his mom and everybody else that he knew, because he knew that she wanted to keep it a secret, right? So he's trying to like do right by her, I guess. And he also knew another secret which was weighing him down, which was that Adam, his dad, cheated on Susanna with his secretary while she was undergoing chemotherapy. Yeah, so Susanna also knows about this, which was why she didn't want to invite Adam to the 4th of July, but Laurel ended up inviting him anyway because she didn't know about the whole cheating thing until after the 4th of July. My goodness, this family. So anyway, big yikes. This was all going down the night of the Deb ball. This was also all going down publicly, so I imagine the tea was piping. I would have been locked in on this family because Jeremiah and Conrad, they got into a tussle. There was yelling. Everybody was yelling at each other. And the reason why Jeremiah was pissed at Conrad was because he was like, why didn't you tell me about this? Why were you keeping this all bottled up inside? And Jeremiah was like, well, listen, I think that it's better to just talk about these things. And so he goes to his mom and he says, Mom, could you really please reconsider doing chemotherapy? Like, I really think you should give it a shot. And she agrees. But anyways, the Deb ball happens that night. Everybody goes back home and everybody is really sad because now everybody knows about the cancer returning. And then hours later, so late that night, or I guess it would be early the next morning, Conrad and Belly end up on the beach together and he confesses his feelings for her. And they kiss. Because ultimately, at the end of the fucking day, Belly's always going to choose Conrad. And that's the fuck of it all. So mind you, at this point, it's probably like 7 a.m. after a restless night, after finding out his mom had cancer. Jeremiah is like, wow, you know, I'm researching into things. I'm researching into all these different treatment options. I had a really sleepless night, but you know, I'm hopeful. And I think that it's time we tell everybody that we are we're a thing, we're dating. And Belly's like, right, about that, I did in fact just kiss your brother, and I do in fact want to be with him instead. That's diabolical! That is diabolical! My God! Naturally, Jeremiah got very upset, because the fuck? And so then Belly reports back to Conrad and was like, yikes. So turns out he was actually very angry, and I think we shouldn't be together in light of this reaction. And Conrad's like, well, I don't really want to not be together, but sure, if that's what you want. And so that's where season 1 ends, all right? Fast forward maybe a month, and Conrad is starting his first year of college at Brown. Belly is starting her junior year of high school. Conrad calls her randomly, and then they start having these deep chats over the phone. One thing leads to another, and eventually they start dating. Come Christmas time, Belly's having sex with him in the cousin's beach house. Sex by the fire at night. However, as Susanna's condition worsens, Conrad becomes more and more distant. He starts neglecting his boyfriend responsibilities, which comes to a head at Belly's prom. He clearly did not want to be there. He wasn't putting in effort, so naturally, Belly assumed that he wanted to break up with her. They had this whole big fight in the rain, like literally right outside her prom venue. She was like, so this means we're over, right? If you're not gonna say it, then I will. And Conrad lets her break up with him even though he didn't want to, but his actions were literally screaming that he did, and he didn't say a goddamn thing like when she, you know, misinterpreted where his feelings were at. So then they break up, and then Susanna dies. And at the funeral, Belly catches Conrad being comforted by his ex-girlfriend, and she gets really angry and tells him to go to hell at his own mother's funeral. Yeah. So then, season 2 officially picks up at the end of Belly's junior year, right before the summer starts, but the Conklins have no plans to go to the summer house, and all of that tea that I just told you about Conrad and Belly's relationship, we get via flashbacks throughout this season. But I just wanted to tell it chronologically so that it makes more sense. Because she's reminiscing, and it's the start of summer, I guess, Belly decides to call Jeremiah. Mind you, they really haven't been in communication this whole time. When Jeremiah answers, he asks her if she's seen Conrad because Conrad is missing. So Belly's like, what? So then Belly and Jeremiah decide to road trip it. They go to Brown to look for him, and then they learn that he went to the cousin's beach house. During this road trip, Belly apologizes for not being there for him when Susanna died and for Loki dropping his ass. And then they make up. So then they get to Cousins, and Conrad informs them that Susanna's stepsister Julia is selling the beach house. So the main plot of season 2 is the gang trying to figure out how to prevent this from happening. The gang being Belly, Conrad, Jeremiah, Cameron randomly, Sky, aka Conrad and Jeremiah's cousin, aka Julia's kid, and then Steven and Taylor end up driving up to Cousins too, and there's definitely some flirtation between them. Shayla, I regret to inform you, is gone forever. My Shayla. Belly also decides to initiate a romance with Jeremiah. Mind you, Jeremiah's wall was up after the shit that went down last year, and could you blame him? No, you can't. Belly was the main catalyst for this, okay? She was the one who was sending him these signals. She was the one getting him to open up and asking him for another chance, right? Okay, so that's the dynamic there. Ultimately, the gang is sure that they're going to lose the house and that Julia is intent on selling it, so they throw this huge party at the cousin's house. Belly ends up crying and drunk dialing Laurel. Laurel comes up to Cousins, bitch slaps Belly across the face, and takes matters into her own hands. She calls Adam and they make an arrangement with Julia not to sell the house. Hooray. But because Conrad literally dropped everything, all of his responsibilities, in order to attempt to save this house by himself, which wasn't going very successfully until everybody else stepped in. He was neglecting his student responsibilities, and he had this really important test the next day that he hadn't even begun to study for, but Belly, Jeremiah, and Steven helped him prepare. They drove him all the way back to Brown. He took the test, and when Conrad got out of taking the test, he caught Belly and Jeremiah kissing, which was awkward, obviously. And Belly and Jeremiah were kissing immediately after. Belly was practically begging Jeremiah for another chance. He was like, listen, I don't think that I could survive you dropping my ass and choosing my brother again. So I need to know that you're choosing me right now. And she's like, of course I am. I choose you. Like, that will never happen again. That will never, absolutely never happen again. At this point, it is Conrad, Jeremiah, and Belly driving home in a storm. Things are very awkward, and the storm gets so bad that they have to stay at this motel. And in the darkness of the night, while the three of them are sleeping in the same room together, Conrad confesses his feelings for Belly. And Belly's like, huh, wow, okay, that's new information. But then, the next morning, before Belly can even really say anything, Conrad's like, hey, I don't know what I was saying last night, but just disregard that. Disregard that. And Belly was like, okay, I will. I will, in fact, disregard that. And she goes to Jeremiah and she's like, hey, babe, we're official, like, we're locking in here, okay? So to reiterate, at the end of season 2, Belly chooses Jeremiah. Also, Steven and Taylor end up together. Also, Cameron and Sky get together. Kinda random, but okay. So at this point, as you could probably gather, where I stand in this love triangle, I am in fact a Jeremiah defender. Hey, I can already hear you Conrad girlies throwing a fit, and I don't want to hear it. So sorry, employed people, for my outburst. What you need to understand is that this love triangle is no joke. It is crazy. It's like Edward and Jacob all over again. And unfortunately for you Edward girlies, I really just feel an urge to defend Jeremiah. I really do. I just feel in my heart that Belly and Conrad are the villains of this story. I feel like if you're looking at it objectively, that's just the case. I actually have a whole video on the Team Conrad, Team Jeremiah thing. If you want to hear like arguments from each side, I pull like even more specific examples because again, I kind of really breezed over seasons 1 and 2. Obviously there's a lot of tiny stuff that went down that I didn't even touch upon. So if you're interested, you can go look at that. But here's the gist of why I feel the way that I do. Because this pattern of behavior has been going on for 2 whole years by this point. Belly loves Conrad, period. He is always going to be her first choice. Since that is the case, there is no reason for her to be entertaining other people when every single thought she has is about Conrad. She is having these experiences and going through life constantly thinking to herself, man, I wish I was with Conrad right now. That's terrible. I find it so disrespectful and treacherous to enter a relationship while your heart is tied up and hell, you're yearning for somebody else. That's absolutely not fair, and there's no excuse for that, which is why I put a lot of the blame on Belly. Belly, my girl, you are doing some diabolical shit. Team Conrad loves to blame Jeremiah because why would he enter a relationship with Belly when he knows she loves Conrad and her and Conrad are meant to be together? Hello? It is 100% Belly's responsibility to say no to Jeremiah if she's feeling the way that she does. But somehow it's Jeremiah's fault that he believes Belly when she says she wants to be with him? That is absolutely not how it works. Be so for real right now. So again, that's why I primarily blame Belly for this whole fuck-uppery. You know who I also blame? Conrad. Because all that Conrad needed to do was be honest with Belly about where he was at emotionally and how he feels towards her. As long as Belly knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that Conrad loved her, she wouldn't have left him. No matter how he treated her, no matter how distant he became, no matter what he said to her. Do I think that's healthy? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, there was no reason for Jeremiah to get wrapped up in all of this. Conrad confessed to Belly and then immediately took it back and said he didn't mean it. Not once, not twice, but 3 different times. Once per season he pulls this shit. That's crazy. He bought her this really meaningful infinity necklace for her birthday during season 1, which, you know, I should definitely mention because on TikTok, if you'll be seeing like the significance of infinity, like infinity, this is where it comes from, because he bought her an infinity necklace because like his love for her is infinite, and there was a conversation that they had as children, whatever, blah blah blah. He bought her this necklace for her birthday in season 1, but instead of giving it to her, he got embarrassed and lied to her the day of, saying that he forgot her birthday. She had to find the necklace herself when she was rifling through his bedroom drawers. She had to dig through this shit in order to get him to give it to her. Of course, I'm sympathetic towards Conrad because of everything he's been through with his mom and stuff, but simultaneously, that doesn't excuse his actions, and he consistently fumbles Belly. He had 1,000,000 chances, and yet I'm supposed to feel bad for him because he keeps self-sabotaging? The only reason I'm happy that Belly and Conrad are probably going to end up together by the end of this is because that means they'll finally stop terrorizing the people around them. But I am not falling for this Conrad propaganda that the rest of y'all are eating up. Okay, so we still have season 3 to discuss, but now I kind of want to switch gears and talk about the behind the scenes drama. I think it'll help paint the picture and give you an understanding of what like the internet environment was like going into season 3. So let's talk about the cast now that you know a bit more about the lore of the show and the characters. So Belly is played by this actress named Lola Tung, fellow Wasian queen. Fun fact, she went to LaGuardia High School along with Sean Kaufman, the actor who plays Steven, and David Iacono, the actor who plays Cam Cameron. So they all knew of each other before being cast, which is pretty coincidental. Lola has the voice of a fucking angel. She was actually Eurydice in the Hadestown on Broadway for about a month alongside Jordan Fisher. Slayed that. She's very unproblematic. Then we have Rain Spencer, who plays Taylor. She seems like a pretty private person from what I've gathered in the interviews, also very unproblematic. Sean seems very similar to Steven, very charismatic in the interviews. Fun fact, he's dating Minnie Mills. I'm pretty sure it's confirmed by this point, and she is the actress who played Shayla. So at least Shayla is getting some justice in this universe in a way. Then we have Elsie Fisher, who played Sky in the series. Both Sky in the show and Elsie in real life in the interviews have a very different vibe from what's going on from the in the rest of the cast. Not to stereotype, but the show very much gives normal straight white girl energy, and so when Elsie/Sky came along, the audience low-key started bullying and hating on them, which was very mean girl of some of y'all to do. Then finally, we have Chris Briney, who plays Conrad, and Gavin Castellano, who plays Jeremiah. I feel like I have the most to say about these two. So first, we'll start off with Chris. Chris seems cool. Fun fact, he was also in the most recent Mean Girls movie. I feel like he brings a very specific energy to Conrad, which I love to see. Like, the way he delivers his lines scratches my brain in just the right way. I feel like he brings a lot of himself to the role, and he really made it his own. And matter of fact, like, when I see the edits of Conrad and when I, like, see Conrad in the show, like, I really, even though I am a Jeremiah defender, I really can't hate Conrad. And I think that is primarily because of Chris. Like Chris is just, like, the way he plays Conrad, it's, like, sassy, it's hilarious, and I can't hate that because he just... he really brings that spark. But anyways, so Chris and Sean seem to be pretty close outside of the show. The thing about Chris is that there are a lot of weird coincidental parallels between him and Conrad. Chris's mom actually passed away after a battle with brain cancer, and he has a long-term girlfriend who I believe he's been dating since season 1 aired. So they're pretty locked in. They seem very happy together, in love to see it. Guess what her name is? Isabel. I know. So now we get to Gavin. I feel like some of the animosity towards Jeremiah's character is because Gavin's the one playing him. And you know how people say, like, oh, it isn't personal? In this case, I think it is. Part of it is probably the inability to separate the actor from the character, but I think it's more so that people just don't seem to like Gavin very much. There is some tea with him. So, okay, first fun fact, he played young Damon in The Vampire Diaries. Another fun fact, he went to the same high school as Brooklyn and Bailey. Crazy, right? Going to that high school must have been crazy. Gavin's digital footprint is scary, to say the least. He self-identifies as a golden retriever, which already, like, the vibes, not great. Made cringy TikTok POVs and thirst traps. That's all harmless though. What people really found questionable was when they noticed that Gavin liked an Instagram reel in 2023. It said, when you find out she's unvaxxed, not a feminist, loves the Lord, and aspires to be a wife, mother, and homemaker. So basically, what he is saying through liking this reel is that his ideal woman is someone who's unvaxxed, not a feminist, loves the Lord, and aspires to be a wife, mother, and homemaker. And there are a few things in that list that people found concerning. And so he responded on Instagram by saying, "Hey, I love y'all so much. It came to my attention there was a gross post liked on my account. I don't even have Instagram on my phone 6-7 days of the week. It may have portrayed false ideas, but it's not how I feel in the slightest. I love y'all. God bless." So he re-downloads Instagram every week? Anyway, that left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. It also seems like he's not super close with the cast, at least more recently, because, and again, like, take this with a grain of salt because the internet loves to create, like, tension and create drama when there could very well be nothing there. But people were analyzing the interviews from the season 3 press tour, particularly this lie detector video, and people were saying it was kind of awkward and tense and slightly hostile low-key. And in these interviews, it also seems to be like Lola and Chris versus Gavin. Like, there seems to be like a little divide between these two. At one point, Lola was asking why Gavin wouldn't accept like her calls, and she was like, "Is it because I'm a woman?" Which is kind of a crazy thing to say, like, in light of stuff like what Gavin's beliefs may or may not be, you know what I mean? So that only fanned the flames of the narrative that the cast doesn't like Gavin. Gavin was also under fire recently for being in a Dunkin' Donuts ad where he said the line, "This tan, genetics." And people were like, why even bring up genetics in a coffee ad? Kind of weird. Not that that was his decision, I'm sure. So then we get to Gavin's relationship history. So from 2016 to 2022, 6 whole years, Gavin was dating this model named Larson Thompson. That's a pretty long relationship, 6 years. So that ended. Then there were rumors circulating that Gavin was like flirting or potentially like cheating with extras on the set of The Summer I Turned Pretty. And so there was like that whole speculation going on. And then in a very shocking turn of events, out of the blue, in 2024, Gavin not only revealed that he was in a relationship, but that he just got married. I heard you're a married girl. So his wife is named Cheyenne. They had been secretly dating for, I guess, about a year, maybe two, before tying the knot. People were very taken aback by this. They were also taken aback because they were like, why does she low-key look like Lola? I honestly don't agree with that take. I do, however, think that she looks like Gavin's sister. So kind of sus. And people were also up in arms because none of the cast was at Gavin's wedding, like whether they weren't invited or decided not to go, regardless, like, but hey, maybe Gavin didn't want to be looking at a sea of strangers on his wedding day. You'll understand the reference later. All right, so with all of that in mind, this season could also be labeled Jeremiah's downfall. And especially, like, with all of this shit stirring up about Gavin, like, you can imagine that we're going to be very, very, very anti-Jeremiah this season. So, let's discuss season 3. It debuted on July 16th of 2025. And I was low-key dreading this season. Well, first of all, I love watching this show. It's my guilty pleasure soap opera. The intro is like crack. I eat up the drama every time. Even though it's cringy and there's a lot to clown on, from the dialogue to the acting to the crazy plot to Jeremiah as a whole. Like, I'm very much aware of his cringiness. And also, the music budget for the show goes crazy. The TikToks make themselves. Literally every single second they're playing a Taylor Swift song or Billie Eilish or Olivia Rodrigo or Sabrina Carpenter. Like, the Swifties eat the show up because of all the Easter eggs and the symbolism and the songs and whatnot. Jeremiah's the pool, Conrad's the ocean. I actually agree with that one. I mean, like, now that someone pointed it out, I was like, damn, okay, like, I see what you're doing here, Jenny. I see what you're doing. All in all, it's a really fun experience. I don't want it to end, but I was mostly dreading it because I knew, as a Jeremiah defender, I will be fighting for my life. Season 2, we left off with Belly entering her senior year of high school. Stephen was going into his first year at Princeton, and Jeremiah was going into his first year at Finch, which is a fictional college that is kind of like, it's not painted in the best light because it's a really easy to get into party school. Not that that's a bad thing, but listen, I'm just telling you how the show is painting the school in this particular light, all right? So, at the start of season 3, there's a 4-year time jump. So now Belly's at the end of her 3rd year at Finch with her boyfriend Jeremiah, who's in his 4th year. Taylor's also at Finch and in a sorority. Belly and Jeremiah are dating, obviously. They've been dating for like 4 years at this point. They're going strong. That is until they go to a party, and at this party, Belly ends up accidentally overhearing that Jeremiah slept with this girl named Lacey Barone over spring break while he was in Cabo. Yeah, Cabo Gates. She then confronts him about this and bitch slaps him. So, we need some background context here. Right before spring break, Jeremiah and Belly got into this argument about Jeremiah going to Cabo, which they ended up breaking up over. After spring break, they got back together, even though Jeremiah never told her about what happened in Cabo. Here's the thing though, because the fight didn't seem that significant, he kind of just throws the words, okay, I guess we're breaking up then. I actually don't remember exactly what it said, but, you know, it wasn't the emotional breakup that we got with Belly and Conrad, you know what I mean? Like, neither of them were crying, they were just mad. It sort of seemed like he maybe said that in the heat of the moment, but regardless, the words break up were said. So, because the fight didn't seem that significant to Belly, she assumed that they were on a temporary break. On the other hand, Jeremiah claimed he thought that they were over for good. In my opinion, the entirety of season 3, but particularly this event, was Jeremiah's character assassination so that the audience will feel satisfied when Belly inevitably ends up with Conrad. But hey, that's just me. Meanwhile, Conrad is in California at Stanford in therapy, and he ends up getting this pretty exclusive med job thing with his friend Agnes. Then we get to Taylor and Stephen. Taylor and Stephen are in this really messy situationship. They're both actively cheating on the people they're seeing in order to be together. Stephen is starting to catch some major feelings though, so he ends up picking Taylor up in his car to have a chat about how they should proceed. However, Taylor is being super avoidant girly representation, and says that they've tried so many times to be together, so what makes him think that it'll work this time around? And she ends up getting really frustrated, asks him to pull over. She hops out of his car, and as he's making a U-turn to chase after her, he gets into a car accident. Yeah, so Belly and Taylor rush to the hospital. Laurel and John are both MIA because they're reigniting old flames, getting down and dirty. Scandalous, I know. Jeremiah shows up at the hospital as well, but keeps his distance because he and Belly are still fighting. Obviously, like, the Cabo reveal just happened. So when Conrad hears about this, he asks his boss, at the job that he's working at, to call in a favor so that Steven can get the best care possible. So he's, like, upgraded to, like, this new doctor, whatever. However, because Conrad is so distraught over Steven, he makes a mistake while he's working and it gets him fired because you can't really be mislabeling blood or whatever. I don't know what he was doing, but it gets him fired. So now he's unemployed. When Steven wakes up, he tells Taylor that she's right about them never being able to work, and so Taylor and Steven call it quits for good. Laurel and John also end their thing after this because Laurel was like, we're being really irresponsible, like, because we were together, we missed our son getting hit, like getting in a freaking car accident, almost dying. Then, in a turn of events that quite literally nobody wanted. So Steven is awake and obviously he's fine, but emotions are high. And because, Belly's grappling with, oh my God, like, I almost lost someone really important to me, she decides, you know what, maybe I should forgive Jeremiah, maybe I should just like hear him out. So they start talking and Jeremiah is apologizing and he's saying he made a mistake, but listen, Belly is the only woman he is ever going to love. Like, he wants to be with her for the rest of his life. And then he asks her to marry him. And the bitch says yes. The dumb bitch says yes! Yes! Alright, so already, this is what we're working with this season. Jeremiah's solution to the fact that he cheated twice in Cabo was to propose. Now, what exactly does cheating twice mean? You could assume what you will, however, no one is entirely sure. However, some fans have theorized and speculated that that means that he slept once with Lacey and another time with his frat brother named Redbird. Now, reason being, Redbird seems like a character with not a lot of purpose, so this would give his character, more meaning. The other reason being, in season 1, we learned that Jeremiah is bi, and that has kind of been forgotten since that episode, so people are kind of hoping we're gonna get some Jeremiah Redbird endgame situation going on, but it could also just be that he chose to sleep with Lacey 2 different times. It kind of goes without saying that everybody is against this, even without knowing about Cabo. Like, everybody is under the impression that they're irresponsibly jumping into a marriage head first, which, yeah, they would be right. They would be correct. Then we have Susanna's memorial. The Conklin and Fisher family pull up to the function. At this point, nobody knows about the engagement except for Belly, Jeremiah, and Taylor. Conrad ends up surprising everyone by showing up. Originally, he wasn't able to because of his job, but if you can remember, the man is now unemployed, so he really has zero obligations keeping him in California, so he makes the trip out to Cousins, and he doesn't even reveal that he's unemployed until like many episodes later. It's not really that big of a deal. He just drops that bomb on them eventually. But anyways, so then Adam, Conrad, Jeremiah, Belly, Steven, and Laurel have dinner. Laurel told John not to come because of their whole, like, they're not gonna try anymore. They're traumatized from the Steven incident. Belly and Jeremiah wanted to announce their engagement when everyone was present, aka all of their parents, but because John was missing, they were like, hey, maybe we shouldn't do it today. But when Adam starts shitting on Jeremiah, Belly felt the need to defend him and whipped out her engagement ring, aka the smallest ring known to man. Now, ironically, Jeremiah was under fire for being irresponsible because he has to do a 5th year of college because he didn't meet his requirements. And Belly was like, whoa, hey, no, he's totally responsible because unbeknownst to all of you, we're getting married in a few weeks. Yeah. Responsible man right there. So as you can imagine, that did not go over well. This season, the Team Conrad girlies have all the ammo. Like, I'm getting decimated out there. When Laurel offered to pay for this cursed dinner, Adam and Jeremiah decided to order the most expensive entree on the menu while Conrad chose the least expensive one. That dinner ended up in a huge fight. Everyone is opposed to the wedding, so Jeremiah and Belly are single-handedly financing it themselves. Belly got a job as a waitress waitress, I think, and then Jeremiah decided to work for his dad as an intern, both for money and to kiss his ass and potentially change his mind about the whole wedding thing. And to be clear, like, nobody is necessarily saying that y'all shouldn't get married because you're not good for each other. Like, obviously, like, everybody knows that they've been together for 4 years, they've known each other their whole lives, but they're not really understanding why the marriage has to happen now while they're both still in college. Like, why not wait a few years? So that's everybody else's argument, and then Belly and Jeremiah's argument is like, well, why not get married now? Because if we're still gonna be together, like, I'd rather, you know, be married. I don't even really know. But Belly is not having a good time during all of this. She hates that the people in her life aren't on board and supporting her. She goes wedding dress shopping on her birthday with Taylor and Taylor's mom, but the whole time she's depressed that her own mother, aka Laurel, doesn't want to be a part of this. Jeremiah ends up showing up the night of her birthday as a surprise, and when him, Belly, and Laurel sit down to talk about the wedding, Laurel straight up is like, I am in fact a hater. I am opposed to the wedding. I want no part of it. I will not be a part of it. Matter of fact, I'm Team Conrad. She did not say that last part, but everyone can feel it in their hearts and read between the lines. Belly gets really mad at Laurel for this and stops living at home and decides to crash at the cousin's house. Guess who else is also crashing at the cousin's house because he's unemployed? Conrad. So Jeremiah takes the opportunity to ask Conrad to be his best man, and Conrad is like, nah bro, I'm opposed to this wedding too. I think it's kind of ridiculous. And Jeremiah and Belly make fun of him for saying that within earshot of him later, but that's besides the point. Anyways, the morning Conrad is about to leave because he doesn't want to be staying at Cousins with Belly alone because he is in fact still in love with her, he finds her crying herself to sleep in her bedroom. And so he decides to change his mind and get on board the wedding train and be Jeremiah's co-best man, because at this point Steven is also on board too as his other co-best man, and Belly is ecstatic with this news and hugs him. Conrad thinks to himself, what have I done? Conrad girlies, I'll admit that this scene was excellent. I ate that shit up. A couple of details that I haven't mentioned yet. Steven is also working for Adam and has a brewing workplace romance with this girl boss named Denise. They have a very much banter rivalry thing going on. Belly was on the waitlist for the study abroad program where she would get to go to Paris, and she got off the waitlist but decided not to go to focus on the wedding. Yikes. There was this plot line with Taylor and her mom because they were in financial trouble, and then Steven got involved because Taylor's mom was meddling, but honestly it was low-key boring and not super relevant. The only thing it did was keep Taylor and Steven in communication even though they're just friends now, and Steven very much has a thing with Denise. Like, I cannot stress this enough. Like, they had many a scene together. Meanwhile, Conrad becomes a handyman randomly, like he's just trying to keep himself busy so that he's not like yearning actively after Belly. He's always on the roof fixing God knows what and cooking Belly chicken that she doesn't eat. So now we get the Conrad episode. This means that for the most part we get Conrad's internal monologue, narration, and things from his point of view, which is why Belly is always shrouded in this aura of light and happiness this episode. Y'all, this episode was juicy. Literally. Keep it juicy. I eat that lunch. So Belly needs to do wedding errands today, but Jeremiah is caught up with work, so she starts doing them herself. But everything's so expensive and it's a lot to manage on her own, so Conrad can't help but step in. What? Isabel Conklin's not excited to eat a cupcake? Who are you? Then we get the frickin' wedding cake debacle. So this may seem like a lot of detail that is not really important, but trust me, it is. If you want to converse about The Summer I Turned Pretty, you're gonna need to know about the wedding cake debacle. Jeremiah's one ask for the wedding. So I think that Jeremiah and Belly, they made a pretty good agreement where they're like, okay, we have to make a lot of compromises to finance this wedding ourselves, so let's just make sure that we both have one thing that we're not going to like make sacrifices for. Jeremiah, he decides that his thing that he absolutely needs to have at his wedding is a 2-tier dark chocolate cake with raspberry coulis and a mirror glaze. However, that's obviously super expensive, so Conrad suggested that Belly give him a counter offer of a 1-tier cake with milk chocolate frosting, hold the mirror glaze. No mirror glaze. So Belly gets on the phone with Jeremiah and she's like, okay, listen, how about we do a 1-tier chocolate cake, milk chocolate frosting, no cacao, but you can keep the raspberry coulis. And the reason that the cacao was brought into the mix was because the person at the cake shop was like, do you want 80% cacao, 70%? Because like when you're dealing with dark chocolate, the higher up you go, the more dark and bitter it is. But anyways, Jeremiah responds, Belly, cacao is the bean. It's what chocolate is made of. Look, the whole flavor profile depends on the bitterness of the dark chocolate and the sweet tartness of the raspberry, which the internet clowned on him for. However, is it a crime to say that I'm low-key on his side? No one is surprised about this, but here's the thing. You can't say, like, he's right. You can't say, oh, I'll have a chocolate cake, hold the cacao. That makes no sense. That's like saying, I'll have lemonade, hold minus the lemon. I understand that's not really the point and his mansplaination was annoying, but also, can we also acknowledge the fact that dark chocolate and raspberry slaps? Like, God forbid a man has taste. So then Conrad ends up taking her to Michael's. Then they stop for peaches. Peaches, 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 peaches. The peaches scene was a juicy, sensual, borderline uncomfortable watch, but it ended up with Conrad wiping the juice off of Belly's chin with the bottom of his shirt. Like, so scandalous. Hello? Then they go back to the cousin's house. He cooks, like they cook together, they have dinner together, like a married couple in a way. And then Jeremiah comes back unexpectedly and hits them with a, honey, I'm home, which a lot of people clown him for because he is very clownable this season. He's clownable every season, but especially this season because they made him so goddamn annoying. I think he's cringy in the other seasons, sure, but in season 3, they intentionally made him really annoying because right when Jeremiah got home, Belly asked him like, oh, do you want any peaches? We got some. And Jeremiah responds, no, but do you have any strawberries? No, bitch, we have peaches. If I had strawberries, I would have said, we have strawberries! The last thing we got this episode was a flashback sex scene between Belly and Conrad. It was so good. Spicier than I think most people expected. Like, damn. The next episode, Belly and Jeremiah go looking for apartments, but they are unsuccessful because Jeremiah has a really bad credit score. What a man. But the good news is that because Jeremiah has been kissing his dad's ass and neglecting Belly, Adam is on board with the wedding now, and he decides to fully finance it and insists on holding it at the country club instead of the cousin's beach house, which Belly is not thrilled with and calls Jeremiah and is like, I don't want to look at a sea of strangers on my wedding day, because Adam is going to invite a bunch of work people, and Jeremiah is like, don't look at them. Look at me. Yet another clownable scene. Then it's time for Belly's bridal shower and Laurel shows up. She was convinced by Conrad to get on board this wedding train, and so now like everybody's on board against their will. Everybody's on this train being held hostage, hurtling towards this fucked up wedding. Then at the end of the episode, Conrad cuts himself surfing. Belly patches him up. Tensions are high. The sun is shining on them. They are mere inches apart. She almost kisses him. Scandal! In my opinion, whoever is so adamantly against Jeremiah for the cheating thing for Cabo, Belly and Conrad are now pretty much unquestionably having an affair. Like, albeit an emotional one, but maybe some of y'all are like, well, you know, nothing technically happened. They didn't kiss, they didn't have sex. Isn't this almost more devastating? Like, I mean, if you think about it, if you're the one in Jeremiah's shoes, your fiance and your brother are knowingly yearning and having these super romantic moments behind your back and keeping it from you. Like, I think that's pretty fucked up. So then it's time for the bachelorette party. So during the day, they kind of have this joint bachelorette party at the cousin's beach house. There's a cringy scene where everybody's rehearsing this dance routine for the wedding. Jeremiah is being annoying this episode as per usual. He pushes Belly to have sex with him, doesn't clean up after his rowdy friends, gets too drunk later on, even though they kind of like both agreed they weren't gonna get fucked up. So the girls that are around for the party are Belly, Taylor, her roommate from college, Annika, and Denise. And then for the boys, we have Jeremiah, Conrad, Steven, Redbird, and some other frat guys. Denise is also kind of hanging out with the boys for most of the night because obviously like her main connection is with Steven. But Denise is cool. she hangs out with the girls later on. Then at night, the guys and the girls separate and hit the town, go to the bars. However, after Belly finds out that it was actually Conrad who convinced Laurel to be a part of the wedding and not Taylor like she originally thought, homegirl starts crashing out. She was also crashing out at her bridal shower because she misremembered a detail about their childhood. She thought that Jeremiah did the sweet thing, but it turns out it was Conrad. And so she was like, if I'm wrong about that, what else am I wrong about? A fucking lot, girl. She's dancing in the club. All the while, she's having full-ass romantic Conrad edits in her head. Edits of her fiance's brother, right? Her body count is currently 2, and they're related and they're brothers. She tells Taylor that she only ever pictured getting married to Conrad. If this happened to me and my fiance was crashing out over her first love, which also happened to be my sibling, like, wow, what? Anyways, meanwhile, Conrad overhears Jeremiah's friends talking about what Jeremiah did in Cabo. And Conrad originally was going to confront Jeremiah then and there, but Jeremiah was so out of it that I'll do this at another time. So Conrad goes to the beach. Belly also goes to the beach expecting to talk with Jeremiah because they had originally planned to do that. But obviously Conrad's the one there, like I just said. And so now that they're together on the beach, Conrad takes this opportunity to tell Belly that Jeremiah cheated on her while he was in Cabo. And Belly's like, yeah, I know. And he's like, okay, if you know, then why the fuck are you still with him? And she's like, well, you know, I love him, I guess. And then Conrad is like, please don't marry him. I'm literally begging you. And also, I love you. And I've always loved you, and I you know, even after we broke up, I never stopped loving you. I can't imagine loving anybody else. Like, I've never been with anybody since we broke up. Like, it was crazy. He was laying it all on the line, and Belly freaking slammed him down. She was like, you treated me horribly. Everything that happened between us was nothing. It was insignificant. Yeah, very dramatic. She ended up crying on the beach. Like, and was I feeling all that sympathetic for her? No, not really. Although, listen, I feel like I've been really harsh on my girl Belly. I do love her, but also, like, come on, girl. Like, please stand up. Like, you did this to yourself. The next day, Conrad decides to pull a classic Conrad and tell her, hey, by the way, that confession on the beach, forget about it. See, no, you can't just say that to people. This is a repeated offense by this point. Like, that's a crazy thing to say to someone because you're, like, basically gaslighting them. And then Belly, like, didn't really let him get away with that. She was like, no, you're crazy for saying that. You're crazy for saying that to me. And he was like, well, sue me. That's how I feel. Like, if it's bothering you, maybe look internally and ask yourself why. Because he can tell that she's not over him, and he would be correct. People on TikTok were making jokes saying that once Conrad learned how to express himself, he couldn't stop. And I think that that's funny because Taylor, right after this conversation that he had with Belly, she decided to confront him, and she was like, well, what did you expect to happen after you confessed to her that the two of you would ride off together in the sunset? And Conrad was like, well, yes. So now it's actually the day before the wedding, aka the day of the wedding rehearsal, and Adam has the audacity to have his +1 be Kaylee, aka his secretary, aka the girl that he cheated on Susanna with while she was going through chemotherapy. Obviously, Laurel was not having it. Neither was Conrad, for that matter. The entire rehearsal, there is so much tension between Conrad and Belly, and Laurel, as the captain of Team Conrad, she was checking in with him because she can tell that this whole thing is killing him even more than it's killing her. And Jeremiah is also being an ass yet again by agreeing to work for his dad without consulting Belly, and this would mean that he would be doing his classes for Finch fully online after Belly gave up Paris to spend more time with him, mind you. So then circling back to Steven for a second, I cannot emphasize enough, you guys, how much flirting and tension and chemistry there's been between Denise and Steven. They have been going strong for 7 episodes by this point. Like, that's literally as long as the entire season 1 was. And only halfway through episode 8, they have one kiss and immediately decide that there's nothing between them. That's crazy! I'm not saying that that's unrealistic. That's not my complaint. And matter of fact, that's never my complaint with TV shows. I for sure am one to suspend disbelief. I'm sure it happens, but it just seemed like such a lazy cop-out choice. Like, I don't know. So now Steven and Denise are just business partners doing some cool tech stuff or whatever. And you know what that means? Steven and Taylor immediately start things up again in the midst of all this wedding drama. And I like Steven and Taylor, don't get me wrong. Season 2, I was eating them up. But the Denise of it all really tainted it for me, I'm not gonna lie. So, the night before the wedding, Belly decides to tell Jeremiah about what Conrad said to her on the beach, aka the confession, and obviously this riled Jeremiah up a little bit. It seemed like the storm had passed, they sleep in the same bed together, but then the next morning, Jeremiah's gone. Missing. I go MIA. Belly tells Steven about Conrad's confession, so now Steven's pissed at Conrad. Conrad tries to be useful by looking for Jeremiah, and he is in fact the one that finds him. And he was in like his mother's like memorial garden or something, I don't know. And then the two of them have it out. We have to have it out, Joe. Conrad's like, I know about Cabo, bitch. And then Jeremiah punches him in the face. And then Conrad gives Jeremiah the letter. So basically, Susanna wrote letters to Conrad, Steven, Jeremiah, and Belly to be given to them on the day of their weddings. And so Conrad hands Jeremiah the letter that Susanna wrote. Like, the envelope was addressed to Jeremiah, except the actual letter that was in the envelope was the one addressed to Conrad. So he ended up reading Conrad's letter, which went a little something like this. Dear Conrad, I can hardly believe my little bug is getting married today. I am just bursting at the thought that my beautiful boy has found the person he wants to spend the rest of his life with. I only ever got to see you in love once, and for that I will always, always be grateful. Not just that I got to see you in love, but I got to see you be loved. Oh, the way she looked at you. It was like you were the only boy in the world. As a mother, there is no greater gift than to see her child be so dearly loved by another person. Today, if there is even a fraction of the love I saw then, I am more than happy. I am overjoyed. Don't be afraid to tell her every day how very much she means to you. Cook for her. Be a good listener. Don't try to win every argument. Jewelry is always welcome. Pay attention to if she wears gold or silver. If she's not a jewelry girl, then chocolate. Love you always and forever, Mom. So, legendary assist by Susanna from the grave. That is crazy. But also, she's low-key messy for saying that because the whole time, like season 1, season 2, like forever, I don't even know when this started, but she was always saying that Belly is going to end up with one of her boys. And so maybe like that put a little prophecy on them, that put a little pressure on them, and now we're in this mess. And then she's so atrociously Team Conrad that she's writing about them. Like, imagine if Conrad, like, was marrying some random girl and then he gets a letter from his dead mom on his wedding day and his mom is saying like, hopefully she can compare to Belly. Like, that's kind of crazy. Anyways, Conrad realizes that he can't be around Jeremiah or Belly, so he goes and says his final goodbye to Belly, kisses her on the forehead, and then leaves. So then Jeremiah comes in and they have this really devastating conversation and ultimately decide to call off the wedding. Obviously, like this, like what have we been doing these past episodes? Because oh my goodness gracious. And then Jeremiah hits her with, I know about Christmas. So pause. Christmas is referring to Belly and Conrad spending time together during Christmas time in the cousin's house, coincidentally. She never told Jeremiah about this because technically nothing happened. Physically, like they didn't kiss, they didn't whatever, they weren't even, like, nothing romantic happened. However, this did mark the moment that Belly low-key started to love Conrad again. And Jeremiah ended up saying that the reason that he started a fight with Belly that led to their breakup, that led to Cabo, was because he knew about Christmas that whole time and was waiting for her to tell him about it, and she never did. So that's his logic, I guess. And Jeremiah is like, I can't marry you when you're in love with my brother. And in my opinion, fucking fair enough. Belly feels like she ruined everything, which low-key she kind of did, and figures everybody needs a break from her, so she spontaneously goes to the airport and hopped on the plane to Paris, but right before she boards, she sees Conrad like in one of those seats in the waiting area. But she does not decide to talk to him, she just dips. Her experience in Paris is a little bit of a disaster. She cannot speak French. She mistakenly was told that there was a seat in the study abroad program that she was originally accepted to, and she was just going to take her seat back or take an open seat that was there. But turns out there's actually no availability and she just came all this way for nothing. So what does this mean? Does this mean that I literally just bought Ratatouille for nothing? So like she was pretty devastated after this. Like she came all this way for this program and they were like, hey psych, like there's actually no room for you. So now she's just wandering around Paris with her luggage and her backpack. And then she stops at a cafe and then someone steals her backpack and she uses her AirTag that Steven gave to her as a gift for the bridal shower to find the backpack in this club, and she ended up getting it back in the true American fashion. And she was also carrying around her luggage during that whole time, but like we don't know what happened to the luggage. It seems like she lost it in the club. I don't know what the fuck happened, but anyways, I guess that's not really the main point. The point is that she got her backpack back. Then she finally has a call with Jeremiah, who wants her back, low key. But she's like, you know, I don't really think that's a good idea. I'm in Paris, by the way, and I think I'm gonna stay here. And Jeremiah's like, don't call me. Don't come by my house. We're done. He never wants to see her again. Steven ends up finding out about what Jeremiah did in Cabo, which was a little bit anticlimactic, but whatever. Even before this point, Jeremiah was a little bit of a bitch to Conrad at certain times, like once at his bachelor party, and then this time during this episode where kind of like evil Jeremiah comes out and he's like threatening him. And it's weird, like his aura is very weird because people simultaneously don't find him threatening at all, but also find him scary. Maybe it's the eyes, I don't know, but as a Jeremiah defender, I feel like he has every right to be evil by this point and say the things that he does because he's not being delusional. Like all of his fears are completely valid. Sure, he cheated on Belly twice in Cabo, but Belly emotionally cheated on him for months with his own brother. The episode ends with a conversation with Conrad and Adam where Conrad was like, by the way, Dad, I'm the one who ruined the wedding because I told Belly I loved her. And Adam was like, why would you do that? And Conrad was like, because I love her. And Adam was like, oh, shit. And that was hilarious because Adam was like, I definitely have missed a few chapters. And he was literally calling Belly Conrad's little sister like a few episodes ago. Anyways, as it stands, we have 2 more episodes to go. And I'm pretty much going in blind. Like from what I could remember after reading the 3rd book, which I kind of read it a little bit like a while ago by this point, like the wedding's off, Paris happened. So what's left? I don't really think that there's a blueprint at this point. Conrad and Belly are gonna end up together. Like there's genuinely no doubt in my mind that that will be the case. How will that unfold? We'll see. So hopefully now when you open TikTok, you'll be able to fully understand what you see. You'll probably get a bunch of edits, either of Conrad and Belly together or like of favorite characters like Steven or Taylor. You'll probably see a lot of Jeremiah slander, potentially some posts dissecting the visual symbolism of the show and why Belly is going to end up with Conrad, which we've known from the beginning, mind you, so like, but it's still fun. Also, you'll probably be seeing a bunch of people saying that they're Team Conrad, even like official accounts of NFL teams joining the trend. Low-key, that pisses me off because I'm like, congrats, you're pandering. You feel exactly the way the author wants you to. Not to be bitter. What you'll also probably be seeing is some comparisons with this other show called My Life with the Walter Boys on Netflix, which also has a love triangle between a POC main character girl and 2 white boy brothers, except it's country themed instead of beach themed. The 2nd season came out recently. I found it incredibly disappointing in a repeat of the 1st season. However, I did have a good time watching it, like for the most part. And the cast is so much more fun to watch off screen in the interviews and whatnot. Like, this goes without saying, I'm obviously Team Alex. I love a short king with the face card. What can I say? Although, I don't hate Cole, like at all. I am definitely more partial to Alex, but Cole is cool too. Oh, also, I just randomly remembered that there was a diss track in season 2 of The Summer I Turned Pretty called Getting Even with Steven, made by Taylor's ex-boyfriend that had beef with Steven. Hilarious. Anyways, that is the tea. That's pretty much, I hope that wasn't too confusing and it gave you a pretty good general rundown of what has happened, and now you can go and talk to your friends and impress them with your knowledge of this brain rot nonsense. This was fun. Same time next week. Love y'all. I'll see you later. Bye.